The sun broke through the horizon in golden streaks as the parade ground came alive with the sound of boots striking the earth in precision. A joint ceremonial parade between the National Police Force and the Army had never drawn this much attention. But today was different. Not because of the medals, not even because of the President's presence. Today, something deeper pulsed beneath the surface, unnoticed by most. Senior Superintendent Darlington Wosu stood tall, his starched navy blue uniform reflecting authority and calm, his boots polished to a mirror shine. Known for his strict discipline and rare smile, Darlington was a man of little words but immense presence. Yet, on this day, his eyes betrayed him. They wandered, often and eagerly, across the field to the woman commanding the left flank. Colonel Zara Attar, a woman whose name alone evoked respect, and whose presence silenced even the boldest cadets. Her olive-green uniform wrapped tightly over her toned frame, medals clinging to her chest like jeweled affirmations of her brilliance. She had earned every accolade on that uniform, but beneath the steel-hearted commander was a woman Darlington had come to admire, and quietly, deeply love. They had met 6 months ago during a high-risk rescue operation along the border. What began as professional respect grew through subtle smiles exchanged during strategy briefings and quiet glances during field debriefings. For Zara, it had been hard to imagine love blooming within the regimented walls of duty, but Darlington's calm nature melted through her guard. As the parade progressed with rhythmic gun salutes and synchronized formations, whispers began to circulate among the ranks. Darlington had requested an unscheduled moment of national honor during closing remarks. His colleagues in the force exchanged curious glances. The Army officers stood at attention, disciplined and composed, but their minds buzzed with speculation. Zara noticed the change in the air. As the final salute echoed, she turned slightly, just enough to catch Darlington's eyes across the field. He stepped forward. Every officer, soldier, cadet, and dignitary turned. Murmurs turned into stunned silence as Darlington walked toward her, not with the formality of rank, but with the trembling courage of a man about to gamble everything. He stopped 3 paces from her. "Colonel Attar," he began, his voice reverberating across the silent field. "I have faced bullets without blinking. I have led men into burning houses and returned with hope. But nothing, has made my hands shake like this moment." Zara's eyes widened. Her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and hope. Darlington knelt on one knee. Gasps rose from the crowd. "I stand here not as a policeman, but as a man. A man who has watched you lead, who has seen your strength, and who has fallen helplessly in love. Zara, in front of those who serve this country, and the skies that watch us every day, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The parade ground stood still, the wind pausing in reverence. Zara's chest rose and fell, her lips parted in shock. Then came her first genuine smile, one so radiant it could have disarmed a battlefield. She stepped forward, lowered herself to his level, and whispered, "Yes." 1,000 times, yes. Thunderous applause erupted. Hats flew in the air. Police officers clapped. Soldiers, usually the stoic kind, pounded their rifles in celebration. Amid tears and laughter, the two embraced, their uniforms brushing, a symbol that even in war and duty, love had found a home. The moment Zara said yes, something shifted across the nation. News cameras had captured it. Every military blog, police media channel, and even national newspapers led with the headline, "The moment duty saluted love, senior officers make history at joint parade." But beyond the headlines and praise was a woman now sitting quietly in the barracks quarters, brushing her fingers over the ring on her left hand. Zara Attar was rarely speechless, but today her thoughts were louder than any command she'd ever given. What had just happened? How did a man like Darlington Wosu, rigid, reserved, and buried in duty, manage to stir up emotions in her that not even a decade of warfront survival had touched? A knock broke her silence. "Permission to enter, Colonel," came a voice she recognized immediately. Darlington. She straightened instinctively before catching herself. "Enter." He stepped in slowly, cap in hand, still in his parade uniform but with a vulnerability that made him look more like a man in love than a commanding officer. "I figured we should talk, without medals and boots in the way." Zara's lips curved. "You're braver than I thought. You proposed to a woman who's trained to disarm in 5 seconds. He smiled. "I was ready to be disarmed, by love." The room fell into a comfortable silence. "I never expected this from you," Zara finally said. From us. Darlington sat on the chair opposite her. Neither did I. But you walked into my world like a drill sergeant, straightened every twisted piece in me, and then left, without warning, without asking permission. You left with my heart. Zara looked away. Her chest tightened. For a woman whose life had been a series of battles, from the academy to commanding male-dominated squads, surrendering emotionally felt foreign, risky. I've always feared love would make me weak. He leaned forward. Then let's be weak together. She blinked. What if we don't make it work? What if it costs us our careers? Darlington stood and gently took her hand. We've both worn bulletproof vests. But this love, is something I'd take a bullet for without one. Tears filled her eyes. Zara had lost comrades, friends, even lovers in the name of service. But something about Darlington's steadiness, his silent promise, made her want to believe again. Outside the window, cadets were rehearsing. Whistles blew. Commands echoed. But inside, the world softened. Two hearts once steeled by duty now found comfort in vulnerability. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was her mother. She answered, expecting the usual stoic lecture. But instead came, Zara, my daughter. I saw it on TV. He looked at you like your father used to look at me before he left for war. Don't lose that. Zara closed her eyes. A rare smile crept over her lips. I won't, Mama. After the call, she turned to Darlington. Okay, she said. Let's do this, loudly, proudly, and together. He exhaled, visibly relieved. Thank God. And one more thing, she added. Yes. Next time you kneel, make sure your boots are polished better. They both burst into laughter, laughter that echoed through the barracks and would later become a memory they'd share over and over again. That evening, the Joint Military Police Command Center issued a rare congratulatory statement, a mix of humor and heartfelt wishes. Social media exploded with memes, parodies, and edits of Darlington's proposal, but none could replicate the magic in Zara's eyes when she said yes. Somewhere between the lines of service and sacrifice, two warriors had found their peace, not in victory, but in each other. The days following the proposal felt like a whirlwind. Everyone had something to say. Some praised the couple for humanizing the uniform. Others whispered concerns about compromising command. But amidst the noise, Darlington and Zara carved out a private world, one shielded not by battalions, but by honesty. On the second morning after the parade, Zara stood before her office mirror in full dress uniform. Today wasn't just any day. It was the first time she'd be addressing her unit post-engagement. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but uncertainty. Would they still see her as their leader, or just a woman in love? She smoothed her medals and tightened her beret. Just then, her aide knocked and entered. Colonel, the squad is ready. She nodded and walked out, each step echoing with inner resolve. As she marched onto the drill ground, the soldiers, mostly men, stood straighter than ever. Silence. Expectation. Then, one soldier stepped forward and saluted. Congratulations. May your love be as fierce as your command. A ripple of soft claps followed. No mockery. No discontent. Just respect. Zara's lips parted in surprise. She gave a sharp nod, suppressing the tears that threatened to rise. They saw her, not less, not different. Just fuller. Stronger. Meanwhile, across town at police headquarters, Darlington faced his own version of the same battle. Deputy Commissioner Bala, his mentor and one-time field partner, called him in. You caused quite a spectacle at that parade, Darlington, Bala said, arms folded. Yes, sir. You know I hate surprises. Yes, sir. Bala leaned back. But if I were 20 years younger, and she looked at me like she looked at you, I'd have done the same damn thing. Darlington relaxed. Thank you, sir. The commissioner chuckled. Just don't let her outrank you at home. That evening, Zara and Darlington met for dinner, not at some secret military dining room, but in a quiet outdoor restaurant by the riverside, under fairy lights strung between wooden poles. No guards. No salute. Just two hearts learning to beat in rhythm. I didn't think they'd accept us so quickly, Zara said between sips of palm wine. They didn't accept us, Darlington said, smiling. They respected your courage. And that respect extended to me. A soft breeze lifted the hem of her wrapper as she leaned in closer. Do you ever wonder how we'd be if we weren't in uniform? Darlington considered that. I'd still notice you across any room. Still fall for your laugh. Still admire your fire. She looked into his eyes. I want us to last, Darlington. I want to come home to you, not just your rank. You will, he said, reaching for her hand. When our badges are off, and the world quiets down, we'll still be us. Their fingers interlocked, calloused from training, scarred from service, but tender in touch. A photographer from a nearby table, recognizing them, captured the moment discreetly. The next day, the photo went viral. 2 warriors. 1 love. No rank required. The nation didn't just admire them. It began rooting for them. It had been 3 weeks since the proposal, and yet, a strange quiet began to wedge itself between Darlington and Zara. They had both returned to their demanding routines, leading units, mediating disputes, supervising drills. But when the day ended and the uniforms came off, so did their words. Zara first noticed it during a dinner at her apartment. Darlington sat across from her, pushing his rice around like it was a minefield. You haven't said a word since you came in, she said softly. He looked up. Just tired. Long day. But she knew that look. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was retreat. She'd seen it on the faces of soldiers right before they shut down after battle. She put down her fork. Talk to me, doll. He sighed, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling like it held the answers. There's something I didn't tell you. Zara's stomach sank. What is it? He hesitated. I was once engaged. Years ago. She couldn't handle the danger. Said she'd rather be a widow of peace than a wife of war. Zara's brows lifted slightly. I thought I buried that chapter, he continued. But now, with everything, the spotlight, the attention, I keep asking myself if I'm dragging you into the same fire. Zara stood and walked over to him. You're not dragging me. I walked into this with eyes wide open. He looked up at her. But what if I lose you too? She sat beside him. Then let's promise never to disappear in silence. Let's say what hurts before it festers. Darlington looked down. I've lived most of my life in silence, Zara. In this job, emotions get men killed. She touched his chest. But this love, it's not a war zone. You don't have to wear armor with me. His eyes softened. You once told me I disarmed you, she said. Then let me help you unload. In the silence that followed, Darlington wept. Not the loud sobs of sorrow, but the quiet, controlled grief of a man who'd held too much for too long. Zara held him. That night, in each other's arms, they whispered more than they had in months. Stories of childhood, memories of lost comrades, dreams of a home with a courtyard where their children could run freely. In the morning, Darlington rose before the sun. He stood at the balcony, watching light chase away the dark. Zara joined him in her robe, pressing her head against his shoulder. Do you still fear losing me? She asked. No, he said. I fear not giving you enough of me before it's too late. She reached for his hand. Then give me today, she whispered. And tomorrow, he added. They sealed it with a kiss, one not forged by passion, but by promise. Later that day, they returned to duty, but this time, something had changed. Their glances held more warmth. Their radios echoed with coded jokes. And when the nation looked at them, they no longer saw 2 high-ranking officers trying to protect a relationship. They saw a man and a woman who had chosen love without retreat. The date was set for December 1st. It wasn't chosen for symbolism or convenience. It was simply the one day both their schedules aligned. The wedding venue was no high-ceilinged cathedral, no lavish ballroom. It was held at the same parade ground where Darlington had gone on one knee. Only this time, there were flowers instead of flags, and joy instead of tension. Zara walked down the makeshift aisle, not in a white flowing gown, but in a radiant ceremonial dress uniform designed specifically for her, a blend of military prestige and bridal elegance. The gold accents shimmered against the rich green of her jacket, and her braid was wrapped with tiny white beads passed down from her grandmother. Darlington waited, dressed in a sharply pressed ceremonial police tunic, adorned with his medals of honor. But it was the way his eyes lit up as she approached that made the entire crowd go quiet. Even the harshest of critics couldn't help but smile. As she reached him, Zara whispered, "You look like a hero." Darlington leaned in. "And you look like my future." The officiant, a retired chaplain who had once served both forces, opened the ceremony with a prayer that blended spiritual depth and the reality of their shared profession. To love while serving. To serve while loving. You do not simply say, "I do today." You say, "I will" every time the alarm goes off at 2 a.m., every time duty calls you away from warmth into war. Zara's eyes shimmered, not from nerves, but from the weight of those words. When it was time for vows, they stepped closer, hands clasped, uniforms gleaming under the soft afternoon sun. Darlington began. "Zara, you are the only battlefield I surrender to. In every war, I've fought to survive. But with you, I finally know what it means to live. I promise to love you louder than sirens, deeper than duty, and longer than even peace may last." Zara, voice steady as a war drum. "Darlington, you are the calm after every storm, the order in my chaos. I choose you every day, when the world is loud, and even more when it goes silent. I promise to protect your heart as fiercely as I protect this nation." There wasn't a dry eye among the soldiers, police officers, dignitaries, and family gathered. The rings were exchanged, solid, simple, engraved with the words, "Love in Command." Then came the moment that broke protocol and tradition. As the chaplain declared, "You may salute your bride," Darlington didn't raise his hand. He lifted her into his arms and kissed her, with the roar of 100 clapping palms behind them. But it didn't stop there. Zara's troops formed a sword arch. Darlington's officers added their sabers. Together, the couple walked under the raised steel, emerging as husband and wife to the sound of trumpets playing an improvised blend of the military and police anthems. It wasn't just a union of hearts, it was a union of purpose. Later that evening, the reception took place in a modest military officers' mess hall, transformed into a dreamy canopy of light, laughter, and lace. Zara changed into a white, off-shoulder gown with embroidered stars on the train. Darlington wore a black suit, still carrying his badge on his chest pocket. During their first dance, Zara whispered, "We survived the system. Now we conquer life." Darlington smiled. "Let them write laws. We'll write our legacy." And they did. Months later, pictures of their wedding were framed in both the army and police headquarters. Please subscribe.